Hi Nature Explorers, welcome to today's show where we are going to get loony. My name is Jillian Whitney and I'm a wildlife biologist here in Massachusetts, and I'm also a member of the Athol Bird and Nature Club. I love spending time outdoors, and today I'm going to tell you a little bit about one of my favorite birds, the common loon. Common loons were extirpated from Massachusetts in the 1800s. Do you know what extirpation means? So extinction is when a species is wiped out completely and not found anywhere in the world. Extirpation is when a species still exists in some parts of the world, but may no longer exist in a place where it used to be. So we lost our loons in Massachusetts for a little while due to habitat loss, pollution, and hunting. But loons returned to Massachusetts, and where they came back to first is very close by. Do you know where that is? So with the creation of the Quabbin Reservoir, our first loon pair returned to Massachusetts. Have you ever visited the Quabbin Reservoir? It's a beautiful place to go and explore nature. And keep your eyes out for a Nature Explorer show that talks about the creation of the Quabbin Reservoir. So let me tell you a little bit why I love these birds so much. They're absolutely beautiful. A male and female loon have the same plumage. Do you know what plumage is? Plumage refers to a bird's feathers. A common loon during breeding season has a beautiful black and white plumage that some people refer to as their tuxedo. They have a black back with white speckles, an iridescent black head and neck with a white collar around their neck. There's a legend about how the loons got their plumage. This Native American legend talks about a blind man trying to get his vision back, and he asks a loon for help. The loon gives him his vision back, and in exchange, the blind man tosses him his sacred necklace of shells. The necklace wraps around the loon's neck, and some shells break off and scatter along its back, giving it its white speckles on its back. So loons make some different calls that they use to communicate. The most famous call that many of you may have heard is the wail. The wail is used for long-range communication between a pair. The next call that a loon might use is called the hoot. This is a short-range call, and this call is again used between pairs, but also between adults and their chicks to communicate. The tremolo, also known as the crazy laugh, is a call that both the male and female use when they feel distressed. So when a predator comes into their territory, when humans get too close, or when another loon comes in and threatens them, they'll use the tremolo. The last call I'm going to talk about is called the yodel. And this call is only used by the males, but it's used for the same reason as those loons use the tremolo, which is when they're in distress. So I'm going to talk about a little bit how loons are built. They are built for diving. So a loon's body is shaped like a torpedo. This mount, some of the older mounts you'll see of loons are a little bit incorrect. So this mount does show the shape of the body, but one thing that's different about loons compared to other birds you see on the water is they have webbed feet that are placed way back on their body. Normally, a loon, you will not see a loon standing up like this. Their legs are actually placed behind them. So this makes them a little clumsy on land, but they're built for diving. So a loon's body acts as a submarine. They'll press out all the air out of their lungs, and they'll use their webbed feet behind them to propel them into the depths to hunt for fish. So loons like to eat bluegill, pumpkin seed, and perch, but they're also known to eat catfish, leeches, snails, and crayfish. A loon eats about 2 pounds of food a day. A loon family with 2 chicks will eat about half a ton of food in a season, which is 1,000 pounds of food. So when loons return in the spring, they're very territorial. And though most people think loons are monogamous, they are not generally monogamous. Do you know what that means? Monogamous is when a pair mates for life. Loons don't usually mate for life and will switch partners throughout different periods of their life. But when they return to their breeding grounds, they pair up and they have a territory that they guard. In this territory, they will mate, they will build a nest, and they will lay their eggs. So one thing that people do to help loons out a little bit is they build a raft. Now this is just a miniature of what a loon raft actually looks like. They're quite large. So this raft protects them from predators with the predator guard. It also shades them from the hot summer sun. There are 2 anchors that are placed on the raft, and this allows the raft to move up and down. So when water level changes, it won't affect the nest. Loons without the nesting rafts generally choose to nest on an island, and sometimes they're successful, but other times their nests get flooded, or if there's a drought, their nest can end up being too far from the water, making it too difficult for a loon to get up and incubate their eggs. So these rafts help them out quite a bit if they decide to use them. So loons usually lay 1 to 3 eggs, typically 2. So I brought along here, this is an average sized chicken egg and then a duplicate of a loon egg. And you can see the size difference, and the loon egg is brown with black speckles. So the male and female will incubate their eggs for 28 to 30 days. After incubation, when the chicks hatch, little fluffy black chicks come out and they spend a lot of time on mom and dad's back when they're first hatched. They do this because 1, it keeps them warm, but it also keeps them safe from predators. Do you know what type of predators might want to take a loon for dinner? Be an eagle, a snapping turtle, and even sometimes another loon will take a baby loon chick. So it's really important that they spend a lot of time close to mom and dad when they're little. Once loon chicks get big enough to take care of themselves, they can spend a lot of time on their own hunting and fishing, and this is usually about 12 weeks they're able to do this. So I'll talk a little bit about loon flight. So loons are, like I said, clumsy on land, excellent divers. They're not the greatest at taking flight, but once they get up in flight, they're amazing. So a loon needs a lot of space on open water to be able to take off and get up in the air. Once they do, they can fly about 70 miles an hour, which is pretty cool. So I told you about their breeding plumage. Once loons hatch their chicks, and fall comes along and the ice starts to take over our water bodies, they get ready to migrate to the coast. Do you know what migration is? Migration is when an animal moves from one place to another when the season changes. So for loons, when late fall comes, they fly to the coast and spend the winter on the coast. Do you know why they have to leave us for the winter? Well, because most of our water bodies freeze over and they don't want to get stuck. So usually mom and dad head first, and when the chicks are big enough and have all their flight feathers and are ready to go, they'll meet them out on the coast, and they all spend the winter in big groups on the coast fishing for the winter. So one thing you'll notice that's different about a loon in the winter versus the summer is they lose their beautiful plumage. So they turn to more of a drab gray-brown, and their eyes go from a bright red to a dark reddish brown. Now, once loons spend the winter, they return to us in the spring, and we start all over again. So one thing about loons is that they are a listed species. So in Massachusetts, they are a species of special concern, which means they are vulnerable. So we need to take care of them. The biggest threat to loons is lead fishing tackle. A piece of lead half the size of a grain of rice can kill a full-grown adult loon, even a bald eagle. So it's really important that we recycle our lead fishing tackle and switch to alternatives. Another threat to loons and lots of our other wildlife is fishing line that has not been discarded properly. It gets caught in trees or is discarded along the shoreline, and birds and other wildlife can get caught in it. So it's really important that we make sure we clean up after ourselves. So along the Quabbin Reservoir, the Wachusett Reservoir, and the Ware River watershed, you'll see canisters like this. And these are for recycling your old lead fishing tackle and for recycling your discarded fishing line. Thank you so much for spending time with me here today. I hope to see you again. Please keep writing in your nature journal, and if you'd like, draw a picture of a loon and send it to dave@atholbirdclub.org. And keep exploring.